Look at this. A polar bear cub, 4 months old, alone on a sheet of ice the size of a country. It weighs less than the dog asleep at your feet right now. And in the next few minutes, the coldest place on Earth is going to try 3 separate times to kill it. This is the top of the world, and nothing up here is on this cub's side. Because here's the part nobody tells you about polar bears. This cub was not born on the ice. It was born underground, in the dead of winter, in total darkness. Months ago, its mother climbed a frozen slope, and she dug into a snowbank, a small curved room barely bigger than her own body, and then she sealed herself inside and let the polar night swallow the whole world. No sun, not for weeks, just black and cold and the slow drum of her own heart. And there, in that buried dark, the cub was born. Blind, deaf, almost naked, barely any fur at all, the size of a stick of butter. It couldn't see, it couldn't hear, it couldn't even walk. It could do exactly one thing: burrow into its mother's warmth and drink. And her milk is close to a third pure fat, some of the richest milk of any animal alive. Because out here, fat isn't a luxury. Fat is the only wall standing between a small body and the cold that wants it. So for the first weeks of its life, that's all the cub does: sleeps, drinks, grows, pressed against a warm mountain of fur, while on the other side of a few feet of snow, the temperature falls to 50 below and the wind tears across 1,000 miles of nothing. And then one thin gray morning in early spring, the mother starts to dig again. But this time upward, toward a pale blue light that none of them have seen in a very, very long time. And the cub follows her out, and it stops dead, because nothing could have prepared it for this. After a whole short life in a room the size of a cupboard, the world just opens. White in every single direction. White that runs and runs until it hits a sky so pale you honestly cannot tell where the ground ends and the air begins. The light is blinding. The cold hits like a flat hand across the face. And the wind up here never ever stops. It just keeps moving, dragging loose snow across the ice like smoke. This is home now, and it is the harshest nursery on the planet. And yet, and this is the part that gets me, the cub plays. It doesn't know it's supposed to be afraid yet. It slips on the ice and catches itself. It bats at the loose snow with a fat paw. It flops down a little slope on its belly and then scrambles straight back up to do the whole thing again. For a few short, precious days before the North teaches it exactly what the North is, it is just a baby being a baby on the single most dangerous playground on Earth. So here's what you have to understand. Out on this ice, the cub has one single thing between itself and death, and that thing is its mother. She's its blanket, its food, its teacher, its bodyguard, all of it at once. And she has maybe 2 years, that's it, to pour everything she knows into this cub before she walks away for good. How to move on ice that shifts and groans and splits under your paws. How to read the wind. How to find the one thing on this entire frozen ocean that can keep them both alive. Seals. Because a polar bear isn't really a creature of the land at all. It's a hunter of the sea ice, and its whole existence balances on one cruel, narrow skill: catching seals in the half second they come up to breathe. Watch the mother do it, because this is the lesson that matters most. A seal has to breathe. Even under a roof of solid ice, it keeps a few holes open, small dark eyes and all that white, and the mother finds one, by smell, from a mile off, across a wind that would take the skin off your face. And then she does the single hardest thing in all of nature. She waits. She lowers herself down beside that hole, nose almost touching the ice, and she goes completely still, and she stays there. For an hour, for 3 hours, for as long as it takes, while the cub learns the very first hard truth of this place. Out here, moving is how you eat, but holding still is how you survive. And then, without any warning at all, the water breaks. One explosive second, a lunge, a heave, and it's finished. And for the first time in its life, the cub tastes real food, not milk, meat and fat, steaming as it's torn open into that freezing air. This right here is the whole game. This is the thing it has to learn to do, entirely on its own, before its mother is gone. And the hard truth, most cubs don't learn it fast enough. Most cubs don't make it through the first year, because the ice is patient. But the ice is not the only thing out here that wants this cub dead. The first real threat has 4 legs and weighs half a ton, a big male polar bear. And here's a fact that stops most people cold. The single deadliest animal to a polar bear cub is another polar bear. Grown males will kill cubs, sometimes for the meat, sometimes just to bring the mother back into season. So the day the cub catches that scent rolling in on the wind, huge and male and close, its mother does not stand and fight. She can't. He is twice her size. She runs. She shoves the cub out ahead of her, and she runs, flat out, across the open ice, and the cub runs with her, tiny legs slamming down, gulping the freezing air, because it has just learned the second lesson of the North. Some things you will never beat. You survive them by being somewhere else. The second threat falls straight out of the sky, and there's no warning for this one either. One moment there's a horizon, the next, the wind lifts the whole surface of the world and throws it sideways, and everything vanishes into a screaming white blank, a whiteout. The cub cannot see its own mother from 10 feet away, and this is how cubs really die out here. Not always in one big dramatic moment, quietly, separated in the storm, sitting down in the wrong place, going still, getting cold, and then colder, and then not getting up. So the mother does the only thing left to do. She drops down, curls her spine into the wind, and pulls the cub in tight against the warm of her belly, and the two of them become a single stone buried slowly under the drifting snow, and they wait, a day, 2 days, whatever it takes, warmth in, wind out, one breath at a time, and the third threat is the ground itself, because the ground up here isn't ground at all. It's a thin skin of frozen sea, floating on black water, cold enough to stop a heart in minutes. And it is alive. It moves. It cracks. Long channels of open water, leads they call them, tear the ice apart with no warning whatsoever. And one day the cub, following close behind its mother, misjudges a gap, and the ice gives, and suddenly it is in the water. The shock of it, the cold like a hammer to the chest, its fur soaking through, turning heavy, dragging it down. And this is the closest it ever comes. This is the moment. It claws at the lip of the ice, and the edge keeps crumbling in its paws. And for a few long seconds, the top of the world very nearly swallows it for good. And then a paw catches something solid, and it hauls, and it drags its own soaked, shaking body up onto the ice. And it lives, barely. And running underneath all of it, the male, the storm, the black water, is the quietest killer of them all, hunger. Because the hunts don't always work. Seals are clever, and the ice is enormous, and sometimes day after day goes by with nothing at all, and both bodies start burning the fat they cannot afford to lose. In a bad season, a mother will drop half her body weight feeding a cub that still can't feed itself, and a cub that isn't learning fast enough is a cub on a countdown it cannot even see. But slowly through the fear, and the cold and the long empty days, something starts to change. The cub gets bigger. Its fur thickens into that dense, hollow, light-trapping coat that makes it look almost like it's glowing. Its paws spread out wide into snowshoes, and it starts to copy her, lying down by the breathing holes on its own, holding still, reading the wind for itself. And then, one gray afternoon, it makes its first kill, clumsy and lucky, and completely its own. And that changes everything. Because the whole point of these 2 brutal years was never to keep the cub safe beside its mother. It was to get it ready for the one moment that safety ends. And when that moment comes, there is no goodbye, no ceremony. One ordinary day, out on the endless ice, the mother simply turns and walks the other way, and she does not look back, because looking back helps neither of them now. She has given this cub every single thing she had, every lesson, every scrap of food, every freezing night curled around it against the wind, and the last thing left to give it is the leaving. And the cub stands there, just for a moment, alone on the top of the world, the very same white nothing that terrified it the day it first crawled out of the den, except now it's bigger, now it's strong, now it knows how to wait by the ice, how to read a storm before it hits, how to feel a male coming on the wind, how to drag itself out of black water and keep breathing. And then it turns, and it walks off into the white, not a helpless little thing anymore, but a survivor. One of the very few that ever made it this far. The Arctic never softened for it. It never will. It doesn't care about this cub, or its mother, or a single one of them. It just is cold, vast, completely indifferent, exactly the way it's been for 100,000 years. But that's the strange, hard beauty of this place. It gives nothing away for free. Everything that lives here because it learned how, because someone lay still beside the ice long enough to teach it. And somewhere out there right now, on a raft of frozen ocean at the very top of our world, A young bear that honestly should have died a dozen times over is walking alone through the snow, alive because it paid attention. And that is a kind of miracle the ice will never once admit to.